America was once the greatest empire in the world, the country where everyone wanted to be. And I remember because I grew up in the 90s when it still felt that way. America was still popping, it was pretty much hitting its peak at that time. But if you look around today, the unfortunate truth is that version of America no longer exists. Today, millions of Americans can't afford to buy homes. They can barely afford their own housing. Millions are living in tents, sheds, storage units, in their cars. Drug use is on the rise, homelessness is on the rise, the family unit is breaking down. More and more children are being raised in fatherless households than ever before. Millions of jobs are being replaced by artificial intelligence. And the truth is, none of this is slowing down. This is all going to accelerate. So in this video, I'm gonna break down 7 undeniable reasons why America can't be saved, but more importantly, what you can actually do about it before it's too late. Reason number 1 is the American middle class, which is disappearing. Now, the American middle class is the group that built the entire country, all right? And this is slowly disappearing, and it's been doing this for the past 2 decades, maybe 3 decades. And when the middle class starts shrinking year after year, a nation is in serious trouble. And since the early 2000s, real wages have stagnated or even declined when you adjust for inflation. Meanwhile, the cost of living, healthcare, education, groceries, all this stuff keeps going up. And the middle class is the backbone of any stable economy. So without it, you're left with a small elite at the top and everyone else is struggling just to get by. Now, I grew up in a lower middle class family. I've seen this change happen up close. My dad was a mailman for 40 plus years. My mom was a part-time visiting nurse while raising 2 children, my brother and I. And on a single mailman salary, which is about 50 to 60K a year at the time, my dad could buy a home. We moved out of the hood, right, when I was just a kid. He was able to raise a family. He even took us on trips such as Disney World when I was really young. We went to Puerto Rico where my dad's from, Guatemala where my mom's from. I played multiple sports. You know, we had Christmas every year. We got presents. I got the newest games for PlayStation. We had a pretty good childhood. Now today, that same job and many more just like it can barely cover a 1-bedroom or a studio apartment in most cities in America. Forget about buying a house. Forget about raising kids in a family. Forget about taking them to trips internationally. That doesn't exist on a mailman salary anymore. That's how bad it's gotten. The American dream that once built families like mine is now completely out of reach for most people. Reason number 2 is the family unit is collapsing. One of the biggest warning signs of a dying civilization is the breakdown of the family unit. And that's exactly what's happening in America. The US now has the highest rate of single-parent households in the entire world. About 23% of American children live with just one parent, usually the mom. So fatherlessness is destroying communities, right? Kids who grow up without fathers are far more likely, and this is fact, they're far more likely to use drugs, to get addicted, to drop out of school, to go to jail, to end up homeless. In fact, 90% of all runaway and homeless kids come from fatherless households. So when families collapse, and some people think this is actually by design, I'm not going to go that far, but when families do collapse, so does the culture that holds everything together, right? The home is supposed to be the foundation of a strong nation, where values, where discipline, where morals are passed down. But when that disappears, chaos fills the void. And that's exactly what we're seeing in the entire country, right? We're seeing broken families. We're seeing broken men. We're seeing more and more suicides where the United States actually has more suicides amongst men than in Japan, which was never the case before. And we're seeing a generation growing up without direction, without structure. Number 3 is the culture in the United States is broken. Culturally, America has lost its soul. There's really no shared identity. There's no unifying vision. There's no common values. People are divided by politics, by gender, by ideology. Everyone's offended by everything. The country that once celebrated freedom of speech now punishes you for having an opinion, or they just censor you. And in the rise of woke culture and third wave feminism, you've got a society that rewards weakness and that shames strength and masculinity. Now in the 90s, when I was growing up as a kid, America still felt proud. It felt hopeful, felt ambitious, it felt united. It felt like it was the greatest country in the world where everyone wanted to be and no one was even thinking about leaving. Go anywhere in South America, such as Colombia and Paraguay, and you'll feel the difference in culture pretty quickly. A place where people actually feel like they belong, where they're super warm and friendly to each other and other foreigners, where there's no political divide, where people are working to live versus living to work, where everything slows down instead of being super fast paced. At the end of the day, culture is all about feeling like a place where you belong. And that's why so many men are leaving, right? Because we actually want to live in places where family, freedom, masculinity, femininity still exists and is valued and not seen as inferior or weak. Number 4 is the US is literally broke and drowning in debt. All right, now let's talk numbers because it's not a good look. The US national debt is over 35 trillion, up from 17 trillion just 10 years ago, and growing by the second. The federal government spends around 7 trillion a year, but it only collects 5 trillion in taxes. And that means that every single year, we're adding another 2 trillion into new debt. The interest payments alone are now over 1 trillion a year, and soon 100% of all taxes collected are just going to go to pay the interest on the debt, but not the debt itself. And here's an uncomfortable truth. It doesn't matter who you elect as president. Could be Republican, could be Democrat. The spending never stops. And the result of this is going to be obvious, right? It's going to be more money printing, more inflation, worse cost of living, more borrowing, more expensive groceries, and eventually higher taxes on everyone. So when you combine higher cost of living, higher taxes, that is not an environment that I want to be around because you can't print your way out of a debt problem, but that's exactly what the US keeps doing and will continue to do. Which again, to be clear, for you, if you're living in the United States, that's going to mean a higher cost of living, worse than what it is now. Also, you're going to be paying more in taxes. So you're being squeezed at both ends, which is why I'm all about moving or traveling to a less expensive country where they don't tax you, where you're able to save much more money, where you're able to live a much higher quality of life for less. Reason number 5 is Americans are also broke and maxed out, right? It's not just the government that's drowning in debt. It's the people too. Now in the year 2000, total household debt in the United States was about 7 trillion. Today, it's over 17 trillion. Credit card balances just hit a record of over 1 trillion. And most Americans are paying double-digit interest rates that they can barely afford, right? Debt such as car loans, student loans, mortgages, they've all skyrocketed. Now here's the scary part. Even people who are making 6 figures a year are living paycheck to paycheck. And here's a stat that you might not believe. 40% of Americans earning over 6 figures a year, they can't come up with $1,000 in savings if an emergency were to occur. And 75% of people earning under $50,000, they can't either. That's not a thriving society. That's a very fragile one. People are exhausted, they're working harder than ever, and somehow falling further behind. And by the way, guys, I hope it doesn't sound like I'm judging here, right? I can actually relate to a lot of this stuff that was going on. Back in before 2022, when I was still living in the United States, just outside of Boston, I felt this too. I was earning less than $1,000, $100,000 a year, and I was barely able to save anything at all, right? After paying the rent, after buying groceries, after eating out occasionally with friends or going on dates, paying for my car, insurance, health insurance. It was very difficult to get ahead and really save anything at all when you're earning less than $100,000 a year in a city outside of Boston, right? Maybe there are certain cities in the United States that are much more affordable. From what I've seen from friends who live in Austin, Texas, Raleigh, North Carolina, parts of Florida, parts of Massachusetts, California, all these places, guys, it's really difficult to get ahead. Most Americans are broke and they're maxed out. So I completely get it. There is a way out, which I will share at the end. Reason number 6 is the dollar is losing its power and will most likely collapse in our lifetimes. Now, for nearly a century, the US dollar has been the world reserve currency. It's been the foundation of America's global dominance. But that era is ending. Back in the year 2000, about 80% of countries traded more with the US than with China. But fast forward to today, now 75% of countries actually trade more with China. So one by one, nations are moving away from the dollar for trade. And as mentioned, many believe that the US dollar is going to collapse very soon. No one knows this for sure, but the truth is it's getting weaker and weaker every year and is most likely to collapse in our lifetime, which of course is not going to be good for the United States. Last point before I actually get into the solution and what you can do about this is number 7, addiction, crime, and civil unrest are rising. So if you walk through any major city in the US, you'll notice that drugs, crime, homelessness, and chaos is going up. In the last 25 years, drug use has actually tripled. Overdose deaths have increased 5-fold. Now, on top of that, crime and civil unrest are also rising. We're seeing more riots, we're seeing more looting, random violence is becoming normal. And here's the irony. In 2025, you're actually safer in most South American cities, or most Latin American cities, than in the US, right? If you look at the Global Peace Index, and I've done a different video on that. So that's how far things have flipped. Between addiction, division, and instability, the US is crumbling from the inside out. And at this point, I think that no politician, no policy, no election is going to fix it, unfortunately. Now, here's the good news, guys. There is a solution to all this. And the solution is to build an international backup plan. So if you're able to see where things are heading in the United States, the smartest thing you can do is to build an international backup plan. Think of this like an insurance policy for your life. Some people are not ready to travel through or move to South America or Southeast Asia or anywhere else abroad that you think is better for you, where you'll be treated best. And I get that. But what you could still do is do what I'm talking about here, the international backup plan. Okay, this is a way to protect your freedom, your wealth, your safety, your health, no matter what happens. Because if the US faces another economic collapse, they face war, pandemic, depression, you don't want to be trapped. You want to have an exit route ready to go. Here's what you can do. Step number one is find a second country outside of the West, meaning anywhere that's not Canada, United States, UK, Australia, Western Europe. You want a place that offers easy residency without requiring huge investments or years of bureaucracy or being forced to live there for a certain period of time. Countries such as Paraguay, Mexico, Panama, these are all examples of countries you can get an international backup plan without having to live there. Now, step two is to acquire legal residency there. All right, once you have your residency card or a cedula, you can open local bank accounts, you can rent property year round or buy property and own it. You can even start a business in that country, just like a local. Now, step three is to open a bank account in that country. And you ideally want one that's going to give you a Visa or MasterCard, and you want to deposit some of your savings into that local currency. Why do you want to do that? Well, obviously, if you were to move there, you want to be able to move money around smoothly within the country, like pay your landlord or use your debit card for everyday purchases. But even more importantly, if your savings is all in US dollars, and the currency were to collapse, your savings just got depleted. Versus if you were to convert some of your US dollars into a different currency, such as, let's use Guarani as an example, which is the currency in Paraguay, which has been very stable for a number of years, then if the US dollar were to collapse, you are now secure with your Guarani, which means you've hedged against the currency risk. So that's pretty much it. With those steps, you've now built a financial and physical safety net. You have a real backup life outside of the system. You'll sleep better at night knowing that if things ever go sideways in the US or downhill fast, you can simply pack your bags, fly to your second base, and continue living freely without skipping a beat. And for me, that peace of mind alone is worth everything. It's invaluable. So at this point, I think it's pretty clear that America isn't headed in a good direction. That's putting it in a nice way. The middle class is shrinking, the culture is fractured, and the economy is drowning in debt. But instead of waiting for things to collapse, you can actually take control and build an international backup plan that gives you true freedom and peace of mind at an affordable price. That's exactly what I did and was a major goal for me in 2025, and it's completely changed how I see life. Because now, no matter what happens in the United States, I know that I'm 100% protected. And if you want help with any of these steps, such as choosing the right country for you, getting residency, or even traveling through or moving to South America, I offer one-on-one private calls for now, links in the description. Or if you just want to watch similar videos to this one, then click this one right here, and I'll see you there.